So welcome back to Yerushalmi Pesachim with Perik Shlishi Halacha Beis, which is on Daf Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph. Batzek Bizdike Ha'areva. You have a piece of dough in a pot, in a bowl, which you need the dough. Now, as far as being mevayet before Pesach, im yesh kezayis b'makom echad, you've got kezayis of dough in one place. Chaim levayet, you have to remove it before Pesach. Pachos mekan, if it's less than that, bata b'miuta is nullified. You don't have to remove it. Same thing, tumah. Sometimes a dough is separate, and sometimes we don't look at it. Maybe a dough is considered separate or not separate. If the owner of chametz is particular to remove it from the bowl, then it sort of separates from tumah. But if you want it to stay there, let's say to close up a crack or something, then it's like the bowl itself. It's not considered a separate entity and would not be a chatzitza. So if you're tightening the bowl, the dough wouldn't get in the way, as it were. Batzek ha'cheresh. This is a dough which is not showing signs of rising. Im yesh ki yotzeba. If you have a similar one, which was kneaded at the same time, shehechmitz, which has risen, then hareza also. Then this one also should be forbidden, because you assume that both went at the same reactionary pace, even though one of them doesn't seem to show signs of rising. Okay, we said in the Mishnah that you've got the dough in the bowl. You have to be mavarit if there's a gazayis in one place. Even if you've got small pieces in a few places and one strand of dough joins them up, they're considered one because of that strand that joins them up. And they've got a din like a whole gazayis, so you have to remove it. But niklaf kula ka'achas. If, however, the pieces are connected, where, you can peel them all off in one go. So, you pull the string and the whole thing comes away. Ad gedon lach, that's all very well. The two pieces, let's say, are moist, connected with this thread of dough, and they all peel off together. But what about yavesh, a bit of dough which is dry, which is connected, which will break up? Do we say it's considered as one piece, which is chai b'bir? Well, the Gemara says, look, if it would be moist, it would come off in one go. Therefore, even though if it's dry, I can say that the same din applies. So you look at the dry ones if it was wet. So even if now you can't peel it off in one go, but if they're mechuba in a way that if it was wet, you would peel them off, they're considered as one chaticha and you have to remove it. Two halves of olives of dough, so olive half size of dough, which is b'toch habayis, which is in the house, and they're all connected. If the house does not join them to a shir kazayis, so you don't have to move them. However, if they're not mechuba, but if they're found b'toch hakli in a vessel, then a kli mitzvah if the keli joins them up. But we've learned in pachos mikan, if there's less than kazayis of dough in one place, even though there's more kazayis, a bit more bottle, but miusay, the dough is nullified. So you see, even in a kli, half as ice is batel, not like Rav Zira. So the Gemara says, Kam b'tolosh. Rav Zira is talking about pieces which are detached of dough, which are in the keli joins them up. The Kam b'mechuba. Mishnah is talking about pieces stuck to the sides of the bowl, which the bowl does not join them up. So on the sides, it's stuck to the outer walls of the bowl, then they're not joined up. Now we ask two similar questions about kazayis of dough, which is in a bowl. And the first question talks about the din Mishnah, that it's in one place in the bowl and you have to remove it. What would be the din mi'atai? If you reduced the share of the dough, which is in one place, until it's less than a kazayis. Do we say, look, now you don't have a kazayis in one place, so it's bottle, there's nothing, you have to remove it. Or maybe but given, since in the beginning you had a share near a levaya, since there was a share to remove, so you have to remove all, even though now you don't have a kazayis in one place. And the second question, the two half olives, which are not connected in a keli, the keli joins them up. So first of all, ad heichan. So how far do we go that the dough can be scattered in the bowl and nevertheless it joins to a share kazayis? Sovereign Meimar, they wanted to say that that the pieces of dough can join to kazayis ad ruba shalareva, even if they're scattered in the majority of the bowl. They're considered one share if they're scattered, ad ruba shalareva, so until the majority, until half the area of the vessel, they're all located in that area. If they're scattered in an area which is the majority of the keli, They don't join up, and you don't have to move them. Now the second question. Ma miet, what happens if you reduce the dough? So the kazayis is now scattered ruba shalareva throughout the majority of the bowl. So until now you had a kazayis scattered till half the keli, and now you took a bit, and you can't find a kazayis unless you look at the whole dough which is scattered on the majority of the bowl, but not on the half of the bowl. You would say, well, now you don't have a half you don't have a kazayis in half, therefore it's batel. You don't have to move it. Or do we say no? The kieva chenira levaya, in the beginning it was there ready to move and remove, therefore tzarich levaya is good, you have to remove the whole thing. Very good question, but we don't actually have an answer on this situation. Okay, let's carry on. And as far as tumah, we said in our Mishnah, the tumah's got the same din. If you've got makpid, then it's chatzitza. What sort of tumah are we talking about? When the Mishnah says, hikpid olav chaytzitz, if you're particular, it's a chatzitza, it means litzvila. So if one bowl became tameh, it's got a dough stuck on it, and you want to tovel in the mikveh, if you're particular, you don't want the dough there, then it's considered something separate. Excuse me. And therefore it's a chatzitza between the water and the bowl, and the tefillah doesn't help. V'im lav, if however you don't care about it there, it's considered separate from the bowl, part of the bowl, and it's not chatzitza l'tefillah. Another thing when it says, the Mishnah also fits in with tara of kalim, which are tamei tumas meis, hi tevila, hi hazaya. The same din with dipping things is the same din with sprinkling the ashes of the red heifer. If you're particular about the dough, then the mechatos won't be matarit. If you don't care about it, then it's part of the bowl. Now the Mishnah said b'cheilini and tumah. It sounds like we're removing tumah to a keli, and not removing tumah from a keli. But the Gemara explained the Mishnah about removing tumah. So he says v'eina chiva l'tumah. Now you're saying about removing. It's also connection for tumah. The sheretz touches the dough, which is stuck to the bowl, and you don't care about the dough, then truly the dough is batel to the bowl, and the bowl should become tameh. The Gemara proves that that's the case. Being harder from that which we learned, if you're careful, if you're particular, it's chatzitza. If you want it to stay there, as if it's part of the bowl. Now, if we're just talking about removing tumah, it should have said bim lav, and if you don't care about it, it's not chatzitza. But the Mishnah didn't finish off like that. It said if you want it to stand, it's like part of the bowl. It sounds like that since you want it to stand, it's considered gufa shel areva, right? It's considered as part of the bowl, right? It's main part of the bowl. So who I did actually, as far as removing tumah to the keli, the dough is part of the keli, and if the sheretz touches the dough, then the keli will become tameh. He said kash on a rebbe. Just like our Mishnah says that a dough stuck to a bowl is like a connect chibur as far as tumah to the keli, and it's not talking about mechatos. But the same thing, tzaya shatachas akisa, I don't know, some dirt under a chair is a chibur l'tumah. Again, it's connection for tumah to the keli. That if a sheretz touches that, the keli is tameh. But ain't a chibur l'azaya. As far as chatzitza is concerned, yeah, it's considered a chatzitza there. As far as sprinkling, so if the mechatos just touch that dirt, then it's not, doesn't help. Yeah, the sprinkling doesn't help. Rav Shimon Lakish, Rav Shimon Kahana. Eva medodo, a limb of a person that's become detached, and it's partially connected. But sipon medodeles, or some sort of nail, which is again remained partially connected. But and the dirt that was under a chair, the hiduk, the kiruya habriya. Now this is what is this? This is you're strengthening a dry pumpkin. You're adding things to strengthen the pumpkin. These are proper chiburim for tumah, right? The sheretz touches any of these things, it's metameh the person or the keli. Mechatos touching it doesn't help. And he says, Af kashos shel kataim. The young hair of the child is a chibur, is a connection to the tumah, for tumah to the child, but not as far as the mechatos sprinkling.
Breathe.
It was a long night.
Big deep.
Yeah. It was a long night. Ma ben dinei tumah, ma ben hazaya. What's the difference, the chibur between what's chibur for tumah and the sprinkling for mechatos? Amravla, but hazaya kesiv. With the sprinkling, it says, "V'hiz ala ayal v'kala kelim." The sprinkle on the tent and all the kelim, right? The word kal is extra. Kolam kuyamin shabikli. basically you have to sprinkle on the keli, and anything which is going to stay with the keli. If you just do it something connected to the keli, it doesn't help. It's something mechuba. It's got to be things which are going to stay with the keli. But as far as removing tumah, the Torah says anything that falls on the nevela is tamei. Tmei lachem. The word lachem tells me that when a keli is tamei, kol, anything connected to it, to the keli, shul etzarech lachem, which is for a purpose, right, is tamei with it. And the same thing round, the other way round. If it's tamei something mechuba keli, which is a purpose, then the keli is tamei as well. So even though that the chiburim mentioned are not really used for the keli, but they have a need for their tamei through the keli and also the other way around. Now the Gemara discusses a dough which is stuck to your hands. Taman in Babel Amrin they said terakta, which is some sort of spongy food. He wanted to make them one by one, but trei terasa, 2 or 3 together also. It's forbidden. Unless he washes his hands between one and the other. So he's going to have a build-up of chametz on these things, right? And it's very sticky, this sponge thing, whatever. And it will stick on your hands, and then it will make the dough chametz. And after you make it, you have to wash your hands before you make the next one. Okay. Tani, we've learnt. Kov tiyais, bir tiyais. These are crackers of some kind made from a mixture of spices. And you put donuts. You put a bit of flour and water. Tzarech levaer. You have to remove them on Pesach. We up a lot last night. Rabbi Yossi Paskin, be'ilen plulina. These are chaluglugos. Do they say what chaluglugos are? They're types of fruits of some kind. Do they give a translation or not?
No.
Okay, the chaluglugos. Tzarech levaer. You have to remove them on Pesach.
Is that first lane?
First lane could be.
Well, that is.
I mentioned in Peah and Erevin. Okay. They would put a bit of flour with it. Oh, right. The Mishnah says as far as this... Huh?
Some kind of herb.
Yeah? Okay. The Mishnah says as far as the dough, which doesn't show signs of rising, then you look at a comparable one. And then you see the difference. That you should see name. It's like the cold got to it and it cooled down, and through the cold is not showing signs of chimutz. If there's no other one to compare it to, ad hechan. How far do we go? How far do you wait that we until we allow you? We say, well, this thing has gone become chametz. Rav Yaakov Arach Rav Oda to Kitchen V'Shem Rav Chanina ad Kedei Hilach Habaz Mil. The time of 8,000 amos. Yeah. Now the shear mil is 2,000 amos. Full mil 3.8 kilometers. Now the shear of 4 mil goes against the shear of chimutz, which is mentioned in the Bavli. Right, the Bavli mentions 18 minutes, 1 mil, which according to some is either 18 or 24 minutes. The Bavli is 18 minutes, and we're saying 72 minutes.
Yeah, that's
What?
That's 4 times.
It's 4 times as much.
Yeah.
The Yerushalmi says you can leave it 4 times as long before it starts rising. You tell all that to the matzah bakeries.
Yeah.
There's no rush, you got 72 minutes.
72 minutes, yeah.
So that's what the Yerushalmi says that. Now, according to some Rishonim, the Bavli is talking about a case where you're not working on the dough, you're just leaving it. And 72 minutes is where you're working on the dough. Some say in Bavli, actually there's another Gemara in Bavli, is mashma, as long as you work on it, it doesn't matter how long. There's no shit. Some Rishonim take on like that. So as long as you work the dough, there's no worry at all. Hours. If you leave it, you don't work on it, then it becomes chametz. So it sounds like the Bavli and Yerushalmi, they argue, first of all, is this man to leave it? Is it 18 minutes or 72 minutes for a start? We do pass in 18 minutes, yeah? We don't pass in 72. Okay. Halacha Gimel. Is that right? Ketzad mafrishin chalas tumah b'yom tov. So chala, which is tamei. How are we going to separate it on Yom Tov now? Well, at what stage in the process are we going to do it? First day Pesach, last day Pesach. Rabbi Lezer, he says, Lo tikul Hashem, don't give it a name of the loaves of challah until you bake the whole lot. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, he says separate challah before baking, and then tatil etzon, and then put it into cold water till after Yom Tov, because that will stop the chimot. Rabbi Shua says lo yisel chametz shemuzarin alav. That's not a chametz that we're worried about. Right? We're not worried about that. Holding chametz in your rishus of someone on Pesach. Ella mafrashta. The woman who separates the challah before baking the dough. Manachta ad erev. You leave it till Motzi Yom Tov. Echmitza. If it becomes chametz, so be it. It's not a problem. So the question is, do we separate the challah beforehand, or should we bake it first and give it a name later? So we're going to see now. Masnisa. The Mishnah talking about case shenitmeis la'achar gulgula. It became tamei, the dough, after the kneading. So the chiyuv of challah came about. You have to separate challah. So the question is, what to do? What to do when the dough is tamei? If it became tamei before the making the dough, there's no chiyuv now. Yasena kamin, you make small amounts and you won't have a chiyuv challah. So avoid having a chiyuv challah. In this situation, you shouldn't separate challah on any of the dough. Each one can be eaten, therefore you can bake the lot. Now, zoom out b'shalosha b'yom tov. You're doing the kneading on Yom Tov. Then you can separate challah on Yom Tov. Mlosha me'erev Yom Tov, you do it before Yom Tov. Then you can't separate the challah on Yom Tov. Like we've learned, challah alosh isa b'yom tov. One who needs the dough on Yom Tov. Mafresh chalasa b'yom tov. You can separate the challah on Yom Tov. However, losha me'erev Yom Tov. If you made the dough before v'shachal mafresh chalasa, you forgot asa l'taltala. You cannot move it on Yom Tov. Yitzchok lo malitam mimeni. You can't take challah from it. Ireis lo yama. The Raisa never said, don't separate challah on Yom Tov, even if you just started getting the flour and water ready before Yom Tov. And alash, even though you finished the kneading before Yom Tov, you can't separate challah. If you just started the initial bit, then there's no issue to separate challah on Yom Tov, because the chiyuv hafrasha comes when you finish the kneading. So if the process is completed before Yom Tov, and you could have separated challah before Yom Tov, you can't separate it on Yom Tov. If the process just started before Yom Tov and is not yet ready to be mafresh before Yom Tov, then you're allowed to be mafresh on Yom Tov after the process finishes. Right? Now, it says in the Mishnah in the challah, when you put the water, you lift up the challah. So it sounds like even though the dough is not really chayav challah until the end of the kneading, but they'll say that you should separate challah earlier. Okay, so here we're talking about, so when you put the water in the flour and you begin the kneading. Even if you began the kneading before Yom Tov, we will not allow you to separate the challah on Yom Tov because you need to separate it before. Now the Brisa says if you finish the kneading before Yom Tov, you cannot separate challah on Yom Tov. Tifta, the Brisa talking about case Isa Tamea. You've made a dough which is tamei. So you only separate challah at the end. You should separate challah usually at the beginning of the kneading when it's a tahar dough. The Bryce is talking about tamei dough. So you don't separate challah except at the end of the kneading. We'll see soon why. And therefore the Bryce in this situation, you've already kneaded the dough before Yom Tov, don't separate challah on Yom Tov. Because, at that point, if you just started the kneading before Yom Tov, you can't separate challah then. And you'll have to separate it on Yom Tov at the end of the kneading. But if you start kneading dough of tahor before Yom Tov, we're going to separate challah at the beginning of the kneading, then you cannot separate the challah on Yom Tov because you could have done it beforehand. Now, why is it that Masechet that you should separate challah at the beginning of the process, only with a tahor dough? But then it would be right, haya, be'isa tahira, shlo yafresh chalasa. When you've got tahor dough, don't separate challah at the beginning, and a basaf, do it at the end. But takana, they instituted tikkun sheyafreshena tchila. First, separate the challah. When you put the water in the flour, shaloi tamei sa'isa, not to defile the dough before you separate the challah. Then what, if we're going to wait to separate challah until the end of the kneading, it could be meanwhile it become tamei. You won't be able to separate challah tahira. That's why they said you should separate challah at the time which is the earliest time you can be mafresh, right? Which is the beginning of kneading. If the dough is tamei, then there's no reason to put the separating challah early, then what do? We separate it at the end of the kneading, which is the best time in the Torah, right? Even if you just started the kneading tamei before Yom Tov, you're allowed to separate the challah on Yom Tov because you could not have done it before. Now, the Brisa tells us if you weren't mafresh challah from an Isa Tameah before Yom Tov, you cannot separate it on Yom Tov. Masnisa be Yom Tov Shal Pesach. We're talking about Pesach. There's a worry of chametz. Separating challah from a dough on Pesach will bring him to chametz, and you can't get out of it. You have to use various ways mentioned in the Mishnah. So when you make a dough, a tamei dough before Pesach, you have to separate challah and burn it before Yom Tov to not to have any suffix. If you don't do that, rather there's a fine. They said no. You mustn't separate challah, so you shouldn't, so you can't eat it. How about seres of a chag when it comes to other Yom Tovim, right? But there's no chashash chametz. Mutter, you're allowed to separate challah even if it was needed before Yom Tov. Rabbi Yosef Ribud, Rav Choda, b'shem Rav Acha. I feel about seres of a chag also. Even in Shavuos and Sukkos, you're not allowed to separate challah from the dough if it was needed before Yom Tov. Al shem kol malacha la yaseh v'hem. Now, Rosh Hashanah, it looks like Masakin Keli. Okay? Now, what's the difference between now cutting certain types of vegetables from their stalks? You're preparing the vegetables for eating, but that's mutan yom tov. It's not tikkun keli. Separating truma should also be permitted, even though you're attacking the food. So he says, zu, the vegetable, roi lachila, you can really eat it with as it is, v'zu, but the dough, ain't roi lachila, it's not fitting until you separate challah. Even though the yerek, cutting the yerek does improve it, but you're not masaking the vegetable to make it fitting. You can cut the leaves and eat it as it is. Therefore, it's not proper tikkun. But before Hafroshas challah, it's also because of tevel. And by separating challah, you're masaking the dough, making it fitting to eat. And therefore, it's like tikkun keli. Rabbana the Kidron boy, they asked, Ma beina, what's the difference between that and Barakinius Beyonce? Selecting kidneys, pulses, is permitted. You can take on Yom Tov, he'll say you can Barakedarko, take good from bad, bad from good. Right? Even though they're not fitting to eat really without Breira, if you see preparing food is not a problem. So, a very good question. I think Gemara does not have an answer. Just seeing the notes here. Could be Trumas and Maestras is usually done in a big amount. You leave it for many days. And you can do it before Yom Tov. But cutting the vegetables is done in small amounts for eating that day. And that's why they didn't forbid you to do it on Yom Tov. Okay. Where are we up to? Now, we said in the view of Rebbe Lezer, one who makes a dough tamei dough on Yom Tov, don't separate challah till after you've baked it. Okay, said Yasser, as Rebbe Lezer, what do you do about the view of Rebbe Lezer? I mean, you can't separate challah from a dough before you baked it. Okay, it's not fitting for eating. So you shouldn't be able to bake any loaves on Yom Tov because one of them will be the challah. And you've baked a dough which will end up being challah. There's no purpose for it. What purpose is there? Well, answers, when you're going to bake the loaves, you cheat on each loaf and you say, this one I want to eat, this one I want to eat. And that way, that's where you can bake the lot. Right? We don't yet know which one you'll separate at the end, but you can say, this one. Okay, when you take them out of the oven, ma'arim, again you cheat when you say, on each loaf you take out, this one I want to leave it to dry out a bit, and not to eat. This one I want to leave and dry it out. Okay. Sure said to Rebbe, according to you leave the loaf in the oven, right? Now Yeshua, he argues in Rebbe Lezer, he says you separate challah from a dough before baking and you leave it till after Yom Tov. He brings a brisa. According to you that you leave the loaf in the oven to be burnt, you're like burning kachim past sulim on Yom Tov. Rebbe Lezer said, you're not burning it with your hands. You're just leaving it in the oven. It burns of its own accord. There's no issue to leave it to leave it to kachim sulim, to be burnt of their own accord. Okay. Now you want to say you leave the challah, you just don't bake it. This is over on Isurim, you might say you're over on these Isurim. It's better to do a negative which hasn't come to you. It didn't come because of your deeds. Rather because of your deeds, these things have come about. Now, let's see now. If there's another machlokes, these people who argue, Reza Rishua, about separating challah from a dough, which is tameh and yom tov, kam ke'ilen palgavasa. Like those who argue the same machlokes as far as blood of kodshim. Do you remember the story? If something which needs one flicking, one blood installation on the mizbeach gets mixed up with something which needs 4. So what do? So tanina tamam, we learned this in blood of karbonos, and they turn in b'matana achas. You've got blood which needs to go one application, b'chor or masa behema, and it got mixed up with other karbonos which they have to have, which other karbonos etc. One matana. So the Cohen does one matana. Some which need 4, like 2 matana, like 2 opposite corners, like Yerushalmi, which gets mixed up with blood of other karbonos. Then the Cohen puts 4 applications on the mizbeach. Yeah, and karbonos, other karbonos that what is meant to be 4, they got mixed up with karbonos of 1. There's machlokes tanoim. Rabbi Eliezer said you do 4. So if you've got a mixture of 1 and 4, how many do you do? Rabbi Eliezer says do 4. Oh, but Rabbi Eliezer, he said, look, if you're going to do 1, then Linus is over about Tigra. You're doing less than what you meant to do. I'm going to be sure. He says, well, you're doing 4. Maybe you're meant to do 1. Linus is over about Tigra. But I'm going to be sure. He also said, even if you're going to tell me there's Baal Tosif, Baal Tigra, it's better to do 1. Because Mutav Lava Mitzvah Loisas Shalei Bas Levana. Do a Loisas which not come to you. It's about Tigra. Shed al Tasa. Yeah, you're over by not doing anything. You're not putting any blood applications on. Better to do that. Mitzvah Loisas Bas Levana. Rather than actually doing a Kumbaseh, an Isur, the Baal Tosif. You're doing an action. It's meant to be 1. I'll do 4 applications. You follow? Now, how are we doing? How am I doing? That's the question. Anyway, halacha. I don't think I've got enough energy for this. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Now, according to Beleza, you'll bake all the loaves, take them out of the oven. 1, you'll separate for challah while it's still in the oven. You leave it there to get burnt. Now, it's not like burning kodshim on Yom Tov. If you're not doing a ma'aser b'yadayim, you're just leaving it to get burnt. And now, if there was another opportunity, of course, he would tell you to do something else. Now, maybe there are other opportunities. Why leave the challah in the oven? Why do you have to leave the challah in the oven? Yikol Hashem, give it a name of challah, b'yadayim, and take it out of the oven. Says you can't do this. Because once you're separating for challah, surah l'taltal, you can't carry it on Yom Tov. It's muksa. It's muksa, so you can't move it. There's no brera, you have to leave it where it is. But Yedana will move it first, when you can still move it, and then give it a name challah, v'yikol Hashem. So you can't do that. Because with Hashem, you'll forget and you'll eat it. But Yikol Hashem, Yedana, give it a name challah, take it from the oven, v'yonechima acheres, you take another one with it, with the same vessel, the Karen Zavis, to a corner of the house. So you won't be over carrying, because you'll carry another one with it. And then there'll be no chashash, you'll forget and eat it. And the Gemara proves that you're allowed to carry Shabbos Yom Tov Keli where there's muksa and something else. Keli is an inataman. But tartin truma. You carry truma, tamea imatayra, or with cholim, when they are separate, in separate kelim. You're allowed to carry the keli for the truma tahira or the cholim. And, you can carry the truma, which is tameh as well, if there's no muksa. Well, it says, v'lai dami, the case is not the same. Taman, the case of the Mishnah, you're carrying truma, tamea, l'tzarech, tahira, it's for the sake of the Torah, for the sake of the chulin. You want to eat. But here, the case of the challah, you're moving chulin, l'tzarech hatmea. They allow you to carry something which is not muksa, even though, look, you're going to end up carrying muksa things. But they don't allow you to carry muksa by being metal to something which is not muksa with it. In the case of our Mishnah then, you want to carry truma tahira or chulin, but you can't do it unless you also carry the truma tzmeah. And therefore you're allowed to carry it together with something which is not muksa. Okay. In our case, it says you want to carry the chalav, which is tameh. In order to do that, you want to carry the chulin with it. So you can't do it. Okay. The Chachamim asked, look, take the kikar, the oven thing from the oven, throw it in the dump, and then make it challah. First take it away, throw it in the rubbish, then separate it as challah. It says, but you can't make something hektish if it's not yours. It's already hefka, you're not the owner on it. Look, make it challah first, and then throw it. You make something hefka, it's not yours. Right? Once you separate it as challah, it's the Cohen's now. You can't just throw it away. Rabbi Yemi Abai, Yafridana, why not break it down into small bits? And what's this? You throw it in the house, Shame, and give it a name challah. And after you throw out the crumbs, it's still in your rishus, and therefore you can separate challah, and it's all scattered. There's no way you're going to come and eat it. Taman over there in halacha gimel, halacha beis, Rav Yemi Shem Rav Zira Shnei Chatzai Zeisim. Remember we had this 2 half olives of dough which is in a house. You don't have to remove it because they're in a bais Pesachim. The house doesn't join them up. If they were b'kli and a keli, then you have to remove them because the kli mitzaref, the keli joins them up. Here he says that the house joins the crumbs to separate challah from the crumbs in the house. But we said a keli doesn't join it up. Now you're saying a house joins it up. If the Isur Chomatz, Rabbi Yomiyah holds that the house doesn't join up 2 half zeisim to a kazayis, so challah as well. I mean, these crumbs in the house shouldn't join up. So you can't really separate it from challah. Rabbi Yosef said there's a difference between the pieces which are on the ground and pieces in the airspace. He says people on the ground, the house doesn't join them up. But pieces in the avir, abayis, like they join up. Okay? Now it's talking about separating challah to throw the pieces in the air. Achu ba'avir, abayis, while they're in the airspace in the house, you call it shame. You give them a name challah before they fall on the ground, when they're still connected together. Okay. Now, boys, I'm going to stop here, I'm afraid. Because just run out of energy, I think.